It's in between. That means it's Saturday. That means
there are no rules.
That we're going to cuss. And Richard, I don't know what this means for every one of you, but Richard said you can fucking suck it.
Wait. Is that two statements? You can fuck
it to you
and
guys.
suck it?
I didn't say it to them.
Oh, was that to me?
Yeah, it was to you guys.
Oh, damn
I'm sorry.
it.
Wait, is that two statements, though? Is he telling us we can fuck it and suck
No,
it,
I
or
said
fucking suck it?
Fucking suck it.
Okay, just making sure.
Is that like getting fitted? What was the word? What was the phrase you said earlier?
You get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
You get what you get and you don't get what fit.
Get in where you fit in?
So
Crown pools, fun,
I know
get
neither
you
one
some,
of,
get you
I
some.
know neither one of you have kids, but it really does.
You get what you fuck it, but you don't suck it.
It surprises me every time we get into it, and I'm like, you really don't know the parenting side of it because you.
No,
so
we're
many
not parenting.
people up where I live in Allen, they're all parents, so all that. It's just always kind of shocking when I come down here and you don't know
But
what you
Todd,
get and throw a fit.
do you not remember Crown Pools Fun? Get you some, get you some.
So that goes back to when we were in television production. Crown Pools, I think they're still in the DFW area.
Crown pools?
Yeah, but they used to really advertise. In fact,
Crown like pool.
Yeah, like a
swimming
The
pool.
name
Like
of the
you-
company,
okay.
Crown Pool.
and their slogan was Crown Pools, good fun, get you one, get you one. And it literally, one of the guys that we worked with, who's now gone on to be an ordained minister, and I seriously doubt he listens to this podcast. You would say something to me, go, Crown Pools are fun, get you one, get you one. And so it literally it was like that nugget that gets
Just
in your
stick in
head.
your head.
And everywhere I'd go, I'd even with my mother, I'd be like, Crown Pools are fun, get you one, get you one. Ah! All right, Sean said he knew what he wanted to talk about today in between.
I was thinking about
You
that, and
lost
I've
it?
already forgotten
Have you lost it?
what
Great.
it is. We've
Use your words.
It's been 5 minutes since then. Seriously.
But before this, so Sean was off wandering around
Where's that
and
going with this?
in his new home, he's made it into a Google home. He asked me, "Hey, you've done a lot of that stuff in your house. I want to do it." And Sean wanted to show me all the ways that he's made his house into one big speaker. And I was like, "Dude, we got one more episode to go. You got to quit playing with the toys."
I don't remember what I was going to say.
But then you said you had something.
I
You were
know, and I
super
can't
excited
remember.
to talk
And
about
it just fell straight out of my head, so I don't remember.
Okay,
It was
on the floor.
Hey,
Let me look under the table.
I'm going to throw it out because I teased
don't
you
see
guys.
it.
I teased you guys about this, and I know you've not done the research. I know you said that if you did this for me, you do it. Just hang on. You'll know where I'm going in a second. I love Star Wars. We all love Star Wars.
I know what I was going to say.
I have written,
I know what you're going to say.
That reminded me.
Yes.
Well, I want, and fine, we'll do both of them. We'll try to get this in 30 minutes since I started mine first. I said to the guys, I've written a book before. I've written the short story that goes along with it. I've worked on the second book, but I've tried to look at these sites where you put your book out there and people can just find it and read it. But one of the things you got to do is you got to get their eyeballs. You got to get traction. So what I've told them, I have considered going along to the prequel films and saying, I'm going to write a book that is a what if it had actually been a good series of movies. And I'm going to tell that story. I'm just going to, without you having watched the prequels in a while, what would, in your opinion, make the prequels better? And don't give me moments of, oh, if they were good. If you can recollect things that you thought were bad, tell me things that you thought were bad that could be better in the prequels. Because I really have considered doing this, but I want the input of what you guys think.
The only thing I was going to say is earlier I was going to bring up when the fuck is Disney going to release the Disney Plus app so I can go ahead and download and get that ready. All right,
I agree with that shit.
Because, I'm ready to watch The Mandalorian.
Let me toss this out. I'll give you one of the things I think about the prequels that's wrong. Anakin is a slave. Not that that's wrong, but he's a slave in slave name only.
He does not come back and try to save people.
But no, what really bothers me is he's a slave without being a slave. We think of slave, we think of Moses, we think of that where they're being whipped, they're doing horrible things. Then we introduce the midichlorians. Instead of that kind of crap, what if he's really a slave? He's really being put into situations in the moment when Qui-Gon comes upon him, someone who's going to be hurt. And Anakin, without any training, uses the Force to push aside. Qui-Gon would sense that. That makes more sense. Those kind of things to me, those little things where you could. My whole idea is if you do rewrite this, you got to keep it as close to it, the original thing as you can. You just got to fix the problems.
The idea of a trade war and a blockade are very, very fascinating and could have a lot of impact.
Yes.
On what's happening.
For adults, not for kids.
No, could have a lot of impact in what's happening at the present moment to move where we get to the Empire and everything related to the Senate. However, it's not a 10-minute discussion by a bunch of stereotypical Japanese characters.
Asian, yeah.
Giving Asian characters giving a diatribe as to what exactly is going on. It's not a bad idea. It's a really good idea.
I agree.
That's something that we talk about, the functions of our government. But it's only interesting to us as adults, and we have to see it play out. We can't give 20 minutes of that thing and then just run into it as if there's some peril.
Now,
there was no peril at the beginning because we didn't have the impact of the trade war.
I don't know how they should have done it exactly, but they shouldn't have had Anakin as a little kid.
I agree. He should have been closer to a teenager.
He should have been older. Yeah, that's true.
The Star Wars movies, let's all agree, are kids' movies.
Without question.
Even though we watch them as adults, even though they're now making them for adults, they're movies that should be made for kids. That being said, when we watch Star Wars, we weren't watching Star Wars to identify with a child. We were identifying with a young man.
Right.
We wanted to be the grown-up person.
Right.
We wanted to be that. Much like Batman introduced a Robin so that kids could have somebody that they could identify with, they were also wanting to be Batman.
Right.
So you should have had a more teenage child that's upset about all the slavery kind of stuff. And so you identify with at least a teenager, not a little kid.
Right.
Because, you're supposed to also want to be the Jedi. You want to be Obi-Wan, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to be the little kid that's just going, whoopee, look at me, I'm accidentally killing everything. Oh, I accidentally did all this stuff.
I think to that point, when Lucas comes out and says these are kids' films, okay, so is Frozen. But Frozen really relates to the parents, and I can put myself in that situation. I get it that it's speaking to a kid, but it doesn't speak down to me as an adult.
That's because we didn't have anything shot from Anakin's perspective. We needed more about Anakin's development over this period of 3 movies than just he's a fodder for whatever's written in the script. He did not do anything that made me want to follow his story. He should have been Luke in these first 3 films, and he wasn't Luke. He wasn't a focus.
I see, and I don't disagree with that. I think one of the big things that's a problem with the entire prequels is it doesn't know who its main character is.
True.
Is it Obi-Wan?
And I personally think it should be Obi-Wan. I think Obi-Wan has a more interesting character arc that is untapped, that Anakin could be there and be a secondary, almost main figure.
But it's the Skywalkers, and it should have been Padme and Anakin moving through this journey together.
And there should not have been such an age difference between Padme and Anakin.
I think then if you take Anakin up, that fixes that problem.
There's also a journey that we needed to watch more with the Emperor, the Senator becoming the Emperor. It
Instead
kind of
just
happened.
He gets melted one day.
It kind of happened, but we know he's the one who's doing all the movements. It would have been nice to see that play itself out over 3 films, and I would have liked Maul to be around a little bit longer because we need that Sith presence to allow what Legion Vader is going to become a part of.
I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to go back to what you talked about with the trade war. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I know that Lucas softened to the idea of true conflict when he began taking Greedo's shooting and having him shoot first. All that stuff when he did that, and he had a famous quote saying, when you start having children, you begin to worry about your heroes just killing people in cold blood.
It's kind of like the Steven Spielberg with Close Encounters,
which Steven now has come back and said, actually I was thinking of E.T. where he put guns in the hands and then he took them away radios. But he came back and said I was wrong.
E.T.'s wrong. The government would have guns,
and he even came back and he said I was trying to be a little touchy-feely. I think that the film, when the invasion of Naboo, when it's just a blockade out there that is shutting the trade down, that's wrong. What it should have been is Maul attacking Naboo, and we should have seen, almost like Vader, he loved
just
those...
a one-man killing machine?
Well, even if he had the droid army behind him, he loves those echoes where it's this and it became that. It should have been Maul being as horrible as he could be, killing people, and finally Padme having to stop something. So there was true... threat.
Hell, if you have Maul leading an army at the end of Phantom Menace, then you reflect that at the end where you see Anakin leading the Clone Wars against all the Jedi. So you see this is what the Sith want, and they're leading, and they lose that. But no, the Sith actually win at the end because they're leading and they win that.
I only see the power of the clones because of the animated series and not because of the movies. And
without question.
I will say this, when you look at 1, 2, and 3 as a plot on paper, I think it is brilliant.
I do too.
When you execute it and you add the dialogue,
bad writing,
and you
the
rush
love
it,
story,
you rush
and all
it into
that,
2 small movies, you cast the wrong actors, your actors are stiff, it's terrible. But when I look at what between the Trade War and the Clone Wars and was doing, like, all those are really well done. Yeah, it was very, very rich. And Anakin's journey, the Palpatine's journey, the setting up the Jedi Order, it's all there. It's just lacking
And part of that
good
is
execution and good plot, good story.
This is something that Todd and I have talked about a long time ago. In 1, 2, and 3, they set up half the bad guys as robots. In 4, 5, and 6, it's humans fighting humans, and that gives you a whole lot of buy-in to it because I'm either a stormtrooper and I'm a bad guy, or I'm part of the rebellion. In the first ones, you have humans fighting robots, so that you can have Jedis going ape shit on everybody, slicing up. You don't have to feel bad about me cutting off a head, cutting off an arm, cutting somebody in half because they're a fucking robot. If that had been people that were fighting, A, you would have had a different feeling about the Jedi, and B, you would have had a different feeling about the war in general instead of one side just building robots and throwing at these people that are making clones that are kind of their robots in their own sense. But it should have been people fighting people.
So to my exercise of how do you fix it, because the Clone Wars cartoon is so great, I already did think of that. When I was a kid, I thought the Clone Wars meant that the clones were the enemies.
I did too. I thought we were fighting the war against the clones.
But
like the Civil War.
My rules are you can't change anything that will change what comes after it that works. You got to fix this one problem. Mm-hmm. So the clones have to remain what the clones are. You got to keep them there. One of the things that I think you could make the more human battle is something you touched on if Maul lasted longer. I also think that Grievous is a mistake that we only meet him in part 3. There, even if it's an allusion to Grievous being this great warrior, that maybe over time battle happens and he goes from being an organic being and so he's the early onset of Darth Vader. You do these peppering these ideas, Vader. And then you put Tyrannus in there, and I actually think by introducing Sidious, you completely negate the journey for him to become Palpatine, the Emperor, because the minute you see him show up and he's speaking like
he's already bad. Yeah.
It's wrong, but again, my rule is you can't change anything since it's in the Clone Wars and it works. You got to find a way. So that's one reason I agree. Maul should last. I think Grievous should be introduced earlier. Yeah. Tyrannus should be a little bit more in there, which also leads into...
Tyrannus, you mean?
Whatever you call him, Tyrannus. How do you fix the Sifo-Dyas problem? Because to me, that's when they get to the clones and it's like Master Sifo-Dyas. I remember watching the movie and go, Master, what the
Sidious?
fuck?
Because that felt to me like they were trying to hide that Darth Sidious actually did it, but he changed his name to Sifo-Dyas, which is kind of
But they never
lame.
Ever explain it. Yeah. It's just that's sloppy execution. Okay, who ordered the clones?
Master Sifo-Dyas.
Okay, who's Master Sifo-Dyas in truth? Do we think it's Sidious?
I really wanted it to be Sidious, but I don't know. Well,
I mean, that's one that that's a conundrum you got to fix also. So we talked about Padme and Anakin. They need to be closer in age. You know what kills me about them falling in love that they don't do?
What?
Here, George Lucas makes Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you take two characters that are diametrically opposed. Now, they did have a love affair before, but he brings them back together because they're in battle, and Indy saves Marion, and then she's doctoring him. You could do that same thing that would draw them together. They're on the run. Once they go on the run in Attack of the Clones, there's no more peril. No one's trying. There should be an assassin following them that puts threat upon her, that he has to save her. She never asked for him to save him, but she feels bad because he's hurt.
Sifo-Dyas is a separate character. It's not supposed to be Sidious. I guess they showed him in the Clone Wars at some point or something.
It's just, boy, that's
it just
sloppy.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like saying, in World War II, General Bob made 5,000 more ships all of a sudden. That came from nowhere. Yeah, there was no motivation for it. Why did Sifo-Dyas make these clone troops? What were they... Why was he stocking up ahead of time? Was he working with Sidious? I don't know.
So the final question I'll ask as far as how you fix it, Anakin's turn to the dark side. How do you make that work?
Well, first of all, he should have been coming back to... Maybe it's a hidden plot that he's keeping from the rest of the Jedi, that he wants to come back and free the slaves on
his mother, whoever
his
it may
mother,
be.
Whatever. And then he gets back there and he finds out his mother's dead. That's fine. And then he wants to fight the slave owners and stuff. And that's where the Jedi start going, well, you can't do that. That's not what the Jedi's mission is. You got to be over here. And he goes, you know what? Screw the Jedi's mission. I'm going to do my mission. And that's where Darth Sidious starts looping him in. And he thinks he's freeing people, but he's freeing them into another slavery.
So it's been a bit. Does Padme have the twins before or after?
What?
She has it right at the end, right?
He kills all the baby Jedis.
Right after he's turned?
Yeah, so he's turned.
She has to die before that. That's how he turns.
Okay, well, hang on. This is another plot hole I want to fix. Leia remembers her mother.
Yeah, that
and she talks
sense.
about the sadness, and so
I always
in my
think
opinion,
that
she
meant to
can't
be,
die.
I always thought that meant to be maybe it was her adopted mother.
I can't buy